Hi everyone, I'm Paula. I'm one of the founders of Green is the New Black, which is a media platform promoting conscious living in fashion, beauty, lifestyle in both Asia and Europe. And today I'm going to talk about climate change through the lens of a trip we had a chance to be part of in the Arctic alongside the 2041 Foundation. This is Steph. She's the founder of Green is the New Black. She's my business partner. She's the other half of Green is the New Black. And in April 2019, we received a call from one of our greatest heroes, one of the biggest adventurers and craziest adventurers of all times, Sir Robert Swan. He's the founder of the 2041 Foundation. He's also the first man in history who walked both the North Pole and the South Pole. He collaborated with Jean-Jacques Cousteau and recently went back to the South Pole with his son Barney, working on it only using renewable energy sponsored by NASA. He's a true legend. The goal of the 2041 Foundation is actually to raise awareness about climate change. It's also to make sure that the treaty, which is now protecting the poles, so the Arctic and Antarctica, will get renewed after 2041. Because after that, all of the big oil and gas companies will start to extract all of the resources from there. So we got selected among thousands of applicants. And we went to the Arctic with 80 different people from 40 different countries. And they were all green warriors in their own way, having a sustainability, environmental, and or social impact in their own countries. We experienced beautiful landscapes, beautiful wildlife. We saw animals from really close, from polar bears to seals to whales. And we saw also walruses, which just became our favorite. But unfortunately, we also experienced firsthand the effect of climate change. We saw ice melting from huge blocks of ice. And this should have never happened, especially at that time of the year. And the temperatures were not even that cold. That was super scary. The goal of our company, Green is the New Black, was definitely to give back 1,000 times more than what we were given for being part of this trip. So we offset our carbon footprint for sure, but also we created a campaign that we called the Naked Arctic Adventure, and we created our first documentary. The documentary is not out yet. It will be released in a few months, but I just wanted to share with you today the teaser of the documentary.
We're living in an age where we're mitigating how fucked the planet is going to be. It's not a matter of if the planet's going to be fucked. And we're literally playing with how fucking dangerous we want to go into the danger zone right now.
People talk in terms of the old story of the canary in the mine. The little canary was down there, and when the air got bad, it fell off the perch, and the miners would go, the air is bad, get out. So the canaries on our planet are both poles.
We set out wanting to answer two big questions. Understanding what is climate change and is it possible to end it? And two, can we do anything about it as individuals?
The crazy thing with climate change is that we're actually not really troubled by the solution. Actually, it's actually about the determination to do it.
And there's so many people who will tell you it's so inconvenient. And it is. It's really freaking hard to do the right thing for climate. We have created a world in which we are so dependent on fuel, and it's extremely inconvenient to live a hermit lifestyle without it.
Looking back at 39,000 days on planet Earth, all I want to do is think about, I was a part of the people who reduced the amount of carnage that we're putting on our planet right now.
Here we are on a tiny dot in a universe that goes on forever. And that my good friends at NASA have told me there's no one out there for a really long way. No, nothing. This is unique. This is something that is worth preserving if you think of the big picture.
This is what we do for the planet. You ready? 1, 2, 3. So I hope you understand now why we called it the Naked Arctic Adventure. when you go to these trips, they actually make you to plunge in a cold water, which is one of the best experiences I've ever had in my entire life. It's crazy because your body reacts like if it was dying. So in order to replenish, it just gives shots of adrenaline and all of the happiness hormones. So after you just feel alive and you just feel super clear. But anyway, just polar plunging or going on adventures like that hasn't always been my dream, and neither Steph's dream. Actually, 10 years ago, Steph and I were dreaming about becoming influential businesswomen. I personally wanted to become an investment banker. I was dreaming about big bucks, hopping from one flight to another, power. So I started my career as an investment banker in Paris. And 1 year later, one depression later, I just quit. And this is when I discovered social entrepreneurship through people like Paul Pullman, who was the CEO of Unilever. And at the time, he would say things like, you can do good by doing well. And it just clicked in my head. It just clicked that it is possible to reconcile impact and profit. And at the time, I was in Asia, so I joined a social enterprise to experience firsthand, that paradigm. And I met with Stephanie, who at the time had already started one of the legs of Green Little Black, which were the Conscious Festival. And together we grew Green Little Black as it is today. Our mission is simple. We want to make conscious living mainstream and accessible. And we do it through 3 different aspects. We have an ethical marketplace. We have a media platform where we empower people and organizations to take what we call little green steps, which can lead to systemic changes. And we also organize large-scale events, the Conscious Festivals, that we've been having in Singapore, Hong Kong. We were supposed to be in London last June, but because of COVID, we had to cancel. And in June 2021, we will be in Paris. We have gathered so far 20,000 participants, hundreds of speakers, and countless brands. So if you're interested, please do reach out. But being social entrepreneurs is not easy every day. Actually, like you, we keep reading, watching videos, hearing about all of the sad news, the scary stats, climate change, biodiversity loss, fires in the Amazons, rainforests being destructed, even the link between our impacts on biodiversity and pandemics such as coronavirus, which is crazy. On the top of that, for us, we also feel sometimes that our method to empower people to take little green steps is also useless, because we hear people saying that it's too late, that it's the role of the government or the private sector to act. And we were in a period of huge doubts before going to the Arctic. Even more so because we just read a lot of articles about the poles before going there, and we just found out, for instance, that the Arctic is now melting at a faster rate than any climate change models predicted. Even the worst climate models, it's bigger than that. And when it comes to Antarctica, which actually accounts for 70% of the total fresh water on Earth, if it melts, the sea level will rise by 200 feet, so 70 meters, which means all of the city and coastal lines will disappear, which means it will be the end of humanity. So we were in this moment of doubts about our action, about our approach. I was even thinking maybe I should just quit, buy a land in remote France where I grew up, and then start a self-sustained commune. And this is when we got the idea of making a documentary. And the documentary message and the narrative falls into 3 parts. The first one was understand even deeper the concept of climate change and the effect of climate change. The second, to understand the current macro solution existing out there. And the third, to understand and to answer the question, is it possible as individuals to actually have an impact on such big things such as climate change? And today I wanted to share with you 3 portions of the documentary which actually illustrate the 3 parts. And we're going to start now with an explanation of what is climate change, which we made it very accessible so as everybody could be connected to that.
Meet Anjali. She's been a climate activist all her life. And she's going to explain what is climate change.
Okay, so the Earth is a circle which is powered literally by the energy of the sun. And the sun comes down and radiates all its light, right? And some of it bounces off. So the ocean's darker, it actually absorbs some of that heat. And you know, the oceans are moving and there's all these things called currents. And those currents can actually move the temperatures of water, and that actually regulates our entire planet's Earth. And the reason why the Earth is not too hot, because there's so much ocean to absorb so much of that heat, is because of the Arctic and the Antarctic, because of these two huge white polar regions that are reflecting off the sun. But what's happening is two things. One, we are burning fossil fuels into the air. And it's as simple as you're seeing a car driving and you see that fume that's coming out. You see it because it's thicker particulate matter than the air around it. So we're putting all of these thicker particulate matters into the air whenever we burn coal or different kinds of carbon dioxide. So some of that sun that was supposed to be bouncing off gets trapped inside because of the thicker air. And so then it starts to warm. And then as it gets warmer, you get stuff like what we're seeing in the Arctic now, where you have much higher temperatures than normal, and all of that ice out there starts to melt. And as that ice starts to melt, you lose that huge white vastness that was reflecting off the sun. And before you know it, you're turning into a situation where the Earth is starting to warm itself at a rate which is alarmingly fast. So like where the rain used to fall doesn't fall there anymore. And where the sun used to shine really hard, it doesn't shine as much there anymore. And the changing of the weather patterns don't make sense because we went and lived in places where the weather made sense to thrive. And farmers planted their crops in places where the weather made sense for that crop. And we're creating a world in which natural disasters are becoming a common phenomena in places where they really hurt people and they hurt our livelihood.
So after the explanation of climate change, of the issues, we actually went to understanding what are the current macro solutions. And for that, we went to interview one of our highlights of the trip. His name is Andy Riley, and he's one of the founders of the WWF Earth Hour. For those who don't know Earth Hour, it's an initiative which started super small and now it's really famous all around the world. And it's all about encouraging people to shut down their electricity for an hour, 1 day per year. And it can seem nothing, but yeah, it has actually a huge impact, not only on the energy consumption, but also on people's mindset. Because you just realize that without energy only for an hour, you're nothing. And this guy, Andy Riley, is also the founder of the Citizen of the Great Barrier Reefs in Australia. And when we met with him, he was not only a very inspiring guy, but so funny and so motivating. So I wanted to share with you the portion of his interview where he talks about the macro solutions.
Andy founded Citizens of the Great Barrier Reef and Earth Hour.
So I think with the Great Barrier Reef, the biggest issue facing the reef is climate change. We have to keep temperatures under 1.5 degrees temperature rise, otherwise we start losing reefs all over the world on a massive level. You're actually talking about collapse of entire marine ecosystems if we don't address climate change in an extremely aggressive way. I should add though, one of the big problems that I perceive, one of the things that worries me the most, is that the world started to believe that the Great Barrier Reef is already lost. And I am really terrified that when people think that we've lost something as iconic and as amazing as the Great Barrier Reef, when we haven't yet, it actually drives apathy rather than action. You know, if we give up on something like the Great Barrier Reef, what are we going to give up on? Coolest thing though is, with all significant changes for the human race, they always measure progress in a linear way, but mostly it happens in an exponential way. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that gives me hope is exponential change in technology. And from that, I mean transmission of energy. I mean from the innovation that we apply to using renewables, how we apply to circular economy. The crazy thing with climate change is that we're actually not really troubled by the solution. Actually, it's actually about the determination to do it. So if we were determined to deal with this problem in the next 10 years, we could deal with this problem in the next 10 years.
Finally, the last part of the documentary is about the macro actions. And as I shared, again, we truly believe that our actions matter and that we should empower people so that they can, start with baby steps, but steady steps, which can lead to systemic changes. And our tagline is Little Green Steps. We've always thought that very intuitively. And we've never really found any scientific studies to back this up until we found a study called The Anatomy of Action, which has been conducted in partnership between the United Nations and the UNSCHOOL. And we went all the way to Paris to meet the founder of the Anatomy of Action, Leila. And we interviewed her for the documentary. And here is what she has to say.
So the Anatomy of Action is basically 5 lifestyle areas that you, me, and everybody on the planet engages with every single day. It's food, stuff, move, money, and fun. And in each one of these everyday areas of life, we have an impact, and that impact is often invisible. And okay, I don't need to be the first person to tell you that the stuff you buy has a massive impact on the planet. And it essentially is what makes the economy go round, which is the key concept of the Anatomy of Action, is that you and I participate in the economy every single second of every single moment of our entire lives. Through the actions we take, the things we buy, and the things we don't do. So when you choose not to buy something, you are having an impact on the economy. It's a bit difficult to see how one choice, that like you might make one choice, it's hard to see how that one choice is having a negative impact on, say, climate. But it's not just one choice, right? There's 7.4 billion people on this planet, and your one choice, I can almost guarantee, is being mimicked and mirrored by many other people. And it's that cumulative impact that is really why we have such an issue with climate change. Essentially, every single one of us, we have the ability to activate our own agency, which is what the Anatomy of Action is all about. We have, no matter how little or big your bank account is, have an impact on the planet through our choices. And so whilst of course we need systemic change, and of course we need governments and businesses to really get their act together if we're going to address the climate crisis and deforestation and all the other issues we know exist. But it all comes down to you and me as well, because we make up the economy. So ultimately, if you want a better future, if you want to be happier, healthier, and see more, furry, fluffy animals popping around, then you should make choices to ensure that that's the trajectory that we end up on.
So I hope you would have understood by now that for us, the most important thing is to realize that individual actions matter and can lead to systemic changes. So this can be summed up into a phrase that we love using, which is sustainability is a journey. It starts from within, it never ends. Nobody is perfect, no organization is perfect. Right now, in terms of sustainability, we are really far from reaching the 100%. So at least let's just try. Let's make it so as we are tolerant with each other. Let's make it that a handful of people, organizations can pave the way for others. And even, if it doesn't lead to anything, at least we're trying and we're growing this inner happiness, inner resilience that we need to just be connected. Thank you very much for listening. I'm really grateful for Ecologi for having us. My name is Paula Miquelis. You can reach out to me. I'm based in France, going to Asia sometimes. We have a team in Asia. If you want to collaborate or if you want to learn more about what we do, just do reach out and go to our website. Bye-bye.